And the second theme, the second idea, comes from a literary theorist and linguist named Mikhail Bakhtin, who talks about what he calls speech genres and utterances. And I won't go into all that unless you want to go down the Bakhtin trail in Q&A. But he has a concept in an essay called speech genres, thinking about basic units of communication. And the idea is that of addressivity, which he defines as the quality of turning to someone. That too is very resonant for me. It's that moment that becomes electric in the room, when people have the urge to share, or address, or talk back, or write back, or somehow engage. It's in that moment of addressivity that the activity of attention becomes the intention to share, to propagate, to form a kind of community. So when I think about dusting for cognition prints, I think about trying to map out attention. Who's paying attention and to what? And I think also about trying to spot that moment of addressivity, the quality of turning to someone. You see it, you share it. So, let's think about technology. Let's think about antiquated technology first. Does anyone recognize this pre-World Wide Web, pre-internet form of online community building?
It's a BBS of some sort.
It is a BBS. Were you ever on a BBS? Do you know what BBS stands for?
Yeah.
There you go. Right, bulletin board. How many of you were ever on a bulletin board system? Okay. Right. They're geeks, but they're not shy. This is good. Good group. I too was on a bulletin board system with my 2400 baud modem. That was blazing fast. That was the extra special $350 from the back of PC Magazine. Why did I want to get onto a bulletin board system? Somebody told me it would be interesting. Well, why was I interested? I like to share knowledge with people, but I could do that in other ways. There was something that seemed kind of exotic about it, of course, right? You could get on and it was, I don't know, the closest I would get to mission control until I moved to Texas, or whatever those inner geek fantasies were. What I soon learned, however, was that the BBS was not just about being a geek. The BBS was about a particular form of communication in which attention and addressivity were highly explicit. All right? It was a community you had to work a little bit to enter. It was a community that you had to know something about a particular subject to be involved in. It was highly voluntary. It was explicitly the result of a choice. It was actually kind of a, not quite a Dungeons and Dragons thing, but I got the little red disc from the guy at the computer center at the University of Richmond who said, "You might be interested in having one of these." Oh, good. It was like The Matrix in the early 90s. So far before it was time for the pills. And there it was. I met people who were interested in movies, who were interested in music. I made a friend with whom I later collaborated on film essays. And we're still in contact to this day. He and his wife are dear friends of my family. Met through the BBS. Well, okay, it's geeky. Okay, it's online. Okay, it was early adopter. It was all those things. It was also explicit about attention and explicit about addressivity. And as I said, the container started to leak. It wasn't just about, hey, how cool is it we're on the BBS? Everything else got discussed, including the birth of our first child in 1990. I got congratulations over the BBS. Now, this may seem like old news. It is in a way, but I want to try to resurrect some of this so that we begin to understand part of that thrill that online life could have and did have in the early days, and varieties of which are still present today. This is not online at all. It too is an obsolete technology. Does anybody recognize this technology?
Laserdisc.
Good. How many of you actually have held a Laserdisc in your hands? Okay, good. All right. That's good. That's good. Laserdisc was the high-res video carrier. Laserdisc was the preferred educational video carrier because it had various affordances that you couldn't get on VHS video cassette, including, as I found, commentary tracks. Now, how many of you know what a commentary track is on a movie? Okay, how many of you have ever had a DVD with a commentary track? A few of you? Okay. So here I am, looking at this Laserdisc, realizing, and it's not this one in particular, but it's one called Black Narcissus, which is a movie from the 40s by Michael Powell and Emmerich Pressburger. And there are two commentary tracks on it. The director comments on the movie, and Martin Scorsese, who is a fan of the director and himself a filmmaker, is commenting on the movie. They're not really interacting, it's kind of a layered thing. But here's the point. I'm sitting here listening to this, recognizing that the things in the frame are there because somebody put them there. The images I was seeing on the Laserdisc were the result of deep, careful, very deliberate attention. What was intended was another question. That's a question for criticism. But it started with evidence of attention. And it was clear in the way Scorsese responded to a film that had inspired him. It even got to be very, very close when Scorsese's editor, Thelma Schoonmaker, married the director. It's another story. That social networking, you never know where it's going to stop. It was clear that Scorsese felt addressed by this movie. We all know as learners what this is like. We may even remember a time before graduate school when we felt this way very naturally. We were in it for the learning. That's my grad school snarky comment today. And the last one. We were in it because we wanted to be in a community that felt addressed by these things in the cultural world around us. We wanted to believe the world was speaking to us, that it meant something, and that it meant something good that we would want to find, we would want to take part in. We wanted to attend to what other people had attended to with the object of sharing those things with us. And I know that many of us still feel that way today. Probably everybody in the room or you wouldn't be here. So these were two early examples, as I reflect on my own experience, where this cognition print, in fact you can see some of the fingerprints on the Laserdisc, began to take hold in my mind as an idea that these were places where I would find attention and addressivity as a learner. How could I do that as a teacher? This is the first way. Anybody recognize this, which is an old technology but not obsolete? These are listserv commands. How many of you belong to some kind of listserv? Right? Okay. And it comes in your email inbox, right? And it's a complete nuisance sometimes because now email is just spam and things from administrators you don't want to hear from, other such things. Building notices from the library, small things. But do you remember when listservs were new? Do you remember how exciting it was? I remember a fellow who worked in the post office at the University of Richmond, where I was working while I was finishing my dissertation at the University of Virginia, brought the International Milton listserv online. Suddenly there was a way for the Miltonists who had email addresses, not a lot did back then, as I remember this probably got started over Bitnet, which really goes back, but we could get together and we could talk, not chat, but exchange bits of information, queries, and so forth, asynchronously, no barriers of time or space, and it would come into our email boxes, which at the time seemed very exotic and wonderful. It's, to me, you've got mail. Now when we think you've got mail, it's like, oh no, turn it off. And back in the day, you've got mail meant, oh, somebody's trying to get hold of you. So I thought I would run a listserv for my classes. I heard that such things were done by people over in the computer science building. So I went over and found a network buddy over in the computer science building. Our campus-wide network had just come online, but he hooked me up with, I think it was Paprika at the time. The computer science network administrator named all the servers after various spices. There was oregano, paprika, and so forth. He was a foodie. He hooked me up. He got me set up for a listserv with my students in a fresh